dealt these cards. And I think one of the things you learnt, and I certainly do, and I love sharing this with people, you got to own your journey. You own your journey, and not everyone gets the same opportunities. You have to do the best, play the best hand cards you've got. The best teams I was in had this thing called belief. Now, you can't see it, can't touch it, but it exists in the best teams. Because when you look around at the dressing room, and it doesn't matter what situation of the game, but when you look at someone and you know, we can win this because I back you and you and you and everyone else around us. You know, it's not an arrogance, but there's a confidence in whatever we got here because we can do it. We'll find a way. That's what exists in those teams.
Hello and welcome to the M26 FIT Podcast. First and foremost, a massive thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in and making this journey so incredibly rewarding and possible. Your support has been the driving force behind every episode and we are beyond grateful. We're always eager to hear from you, so if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, please don't hesitate to send them our way. We love diving into your curiosities and providing content that educates, inspires and empowers you to become the strongest, fittest and healthiest version of yourself. If you want to learn more about M26 FIT, you can check out our socials and head over to our website where you can sign up for a challenge, inquire about our adventures and check out our range of apparel. So grab your headphones, settle in, and let's get cracking on yet another exciting episode. Today's special guest is Michael Kasprowicz, former Australian and international cricketer and fast bowling legend. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Now, you may not remember, but we first met back around 30 years ago when you worked at Metway Bank as a teller, and I was a tradie and I'd come in on a Friday afternoon and see you and get my check cashed. Bringing back some memories?
I'm not sure they're good ones, but it was a long time ago and I had just started playing cricket in the Queensland cricket team. I was 18 years old and I was given a job part-time. I was sort of like 3 days a week going up to Garden City.
That's it?
I was up there and, yeah, for Metway Bank. Which is, you know, was transformed, I suppose, with Suncorp down right now. But it was one of those great learning experiences. So as a young guy going in, and just sort of learning a bit about that, you know, worked hard. And also one of the things I did, Magnus, the whole way through was instead of just the standard next please, was try to sort of smile and, you know, and talk to people. How was your day? You know, what's going on? You didn't necessarily get a great response because most people had a shit day. But the thing was, it was actually good. And I'm sorry, I can't remember.
No, that's fine. Now, a couple of stats. So you were the second highest Sheffield Shield wicket taker of all time, 959 first-class wickets. You were a subcontinent specialist. 91-92 season, you became the youngest Australian to take 50 first-class wickets. Yeah, and you played in an era with some of arguably the best ever fast bowlers, which may explain why you were also the most dropped and the most selected player. You have an MBA and you're the proud father of 3 children. That's not a bad rap sheet.
Yeah. Well, when you say that, look, you describe my dream right there. I had the opportunity to play cricket for Australia, to be the 369th person ever to wear the baggy green cap. So as a young guy growing up and loving cricket, loving all sport, rugby, everything, all of a sudden I was selected when I was at State High, Brisbane State High, to be in the Queensland cricket team. So all of a sudden I'm in this dressing room. I used to catch I think it was the 169 bus down Vulture Street from Brisbane State High, which is just up near South Bank. It was 2 zones too, 40 cents in those days. I didn't want to walk that extra sort of 150 metres. So I spent 40 cents to actually get to training, had my cricket bag. I'd go into a dressing room where you had Alan Border, you know, there was a Greg Ritchie who was the captain, you know, Craig McDermott, Carl Rackerman, you know, all these sort of names, and I probably had posters on my wall with these blokes, not long beforehand, but all of a sudden in the dressing room and sort of it was one of the most as a learning experience. Never mind studying in MBAs and all the rest with schooling, but I'm going to say in that dressing room with those people was one of the greatest learning experiences of my life.
Yeah, how old were you then?
17.
17. So you were a schoolboy rugby forward. When did you make the decision to choose cricket over rugby?
Well, I actually played Australian schoolboys rugby. So I went, like I said, Brisbane State High.
Yep.
Played a couple of years in the first 15 there, and then got selected in the Queensland team. On the bench, we went to the Australian Championships and then got selected in the Australian rugby team to go over to New Zealand, where kind of unsurprisingly we lost against New Zealand. However, I came back from that whole experience. It was about September, late September, coming straight back into a cricket season. And the GPS season was at the beginning of the year, so I joined my club team I played with for 19 seasons was the University of Queensland. The very first game I played was second grade, and I was opening the bowling with a guy named John Eales. Ealesy was actually who went on to become, possibly Australia's best ever rugby union player and captain and most successful. He was actually opening the bowling. He got the first over. I had to bowl uphill into the breeze. So, but that was all fantastic. That experience. Like I said, at 17 years old, I didn't have to make a decision between rugby and cricket. The decision was made for me.
Yeah, great answer. So fast bowling's very taxing on the body, requiring some pretty specific and intense physical strength and fitness. Can you tell us about your training routine and how you prepare for a match?
Well, I actually went through the 19 seasons that I played for Queensland, and it was 10 years with the Australian cricket team. I should point this out now. I was in and out of that side 13 times in the 10-year period, and finding a way to get back in that side. So you play, and as you said, the strength of that team with McGrath, Gillespie, all the fast bowlers we actually had through that period of time, and success. But to be able to get back into that team regularly is something we will talk about. But I think as far as the fitness side, I suppose I think when I started, it was you just came in and bowled fast. We used to run. Back in the day, I remember Trevor Hendy used to have a fair bit of work. Craig McDermott did a lot of work with Trevor Hendy, and it was based on a lot of running.
The Iron Man?
The Iron Man, yes. A lot of running off-season. I remember Dennis Lilly and read all the books and looked up to him. Dennis Lilly was just my absolute god as a kid growing up who could bowl a little bit quick. And his background was running. He said just run because you put the miles in your legs and then that'll be fine on the field. But those 19 years I played also corresponded to non-professional, semi-professional, and then fully professional, just the start of where we are today. So obviously with training and all that sort of, there was quite a bit of change.
Yeah. So mental strength now and toughness. So cricket, like most sports, is just as much a mental game as it is physical. How did you develop and maintain mental resilience during high-pressure situations, and can you share some examples and tips for us?
Well, the best example of that is when you're dropped or when you're not selected, when you're injured is the other one.
Yes.
And that's part of it, is that this is not easy. The whole thing is not easy because you will find every single day you play and start to bowl, there's pain. There's pain somewhere in your body. And I used to talk about it, I used to call it the niggle worm, in that it starts somewhere in your body. You'll start bowling, then might be your left ankle starts really squealing. But if you keep bowling, then all of a sudden it'll disappear, but it'll turn up tomorrow in your right shoulder. And so I like to sort of say that, once you know what good pain is, and there's bad pain for obvious reasons, you can have to get through that. And I think that's the thing with certainly fast bowling, is just understanding what there is, because, and as soon as you feel good, that's when you really got to be worried. Because that twice, and only twice my whole career, 19 years, I verbally admitted that I felt great. And both times when I said that out loud, once to a physio at the Adelaide Oval, Queensland physio, I got injured. I did an intercostal in my ribs, and the second time something similar like that, I got injured straight away. So I sort of banned myself, I guess, from necessarily not so much feeling good, but acknowledging that I felt good.
Yeah. So the good pain and the bad pain, that's just so if it's good pain, then you know to push through. And if it's bad pain, then it's like, stop or I'm going to make the injury worse. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's where the resilience comes, where you do train. I'm not saying we're just doing light laps and things like that, but there was a lot of running. And I used to love, even when I was at school, going to school early, but going down to Kangaroo Point Cliffs and doing the stairs. Just looking at things that other people wouldn't be doing. I think it's trying to, if you like, separate yourself from the crowd, because I just felt internally, and even I remember running at home and, hill sprints and finding things that I could do that were just going to be better. And while it was cold or it was wet, knowing that other people wouldn't be doing it, I remember, I think it was Ron Clark or someone, an Olympian from years ago, talking about that, and I thought, that's a nugget, I'm going to take that. Because I think that's the key, is that, it's just about any bit of training. It's going to hurt, but I think that's where you do build that resilience, and you understand that if it's going to hurt, I can get through this. And there was a term I used to love, once again, there's lots of those cliches and that pop in your head you learn about. One of them was the only time to think about pain is after the game, because it doesn't hurt as much then. And the other one, I think, was the UK SAS. I think one of their terms is pain is weakness leaving the body. So that you try to fill that with that voice in your head when it's hurting. It's just throw those ones in there to replace the just stop now.
Yeah, love it. Favourite cricketing moments. Reflecting back on your career, what would you consider some of your standout and most memorable moments on the field?
I think I'll separate the two, right? One's being with team-based, and obviously that's success, and it was team-based, but also individual. So ironically, both of these things occurred in India. Not the same match, about 6 years apart. So the first one was individually, going over to India in 1998 with the Australian team. It was 40 degrees plus. We're playing in February, March. It's so hot. I successfully lost about 10 kilo in about 3 weeks. And you're playing on these surfaces. The wickets there are so different. The pitch, there's no grass anywhere on the pitch. Probably not even a living organism in that thing, which doesn't necessarily help the fast bowler, because we like a little bit of grass for our ball to help us out, swinging and doing certain things. But one of the things going there was being the most challenging thing I've ever done, being put in a position, because McGrath, Gillespie, who else? Everyone was conveniently injured, put it that way. So I got the gig. And so, but playing there, and it's the first 2 test matches, playing against the best batsman in the world, Tendulkar, Dravid, on these conditions, like I said, the most challenging thing ever. But at the same point, the last test match we played was in Chinnaswamy Stadium in Bangalore. And the second innings, I got 5 for 29, I think it was, and got man of the match, and we won the test match. The first time in 30 odd years. So that for me was the most, as a moment, I remember just coming off the field so exhausted from obviously the last, previous month and a half, 5 weeks, lounging into this, it was quite comfortable actually, chair, unlike this one you got me in today, but almost like a loungy chair, and sitting back in this thing and shutting my eyes, and just, it was the most powerful, call it mindfulness episode of just the moment, recognise the moment, and not just the smells and sounds all that, but of what had happened, to sit there and acknowledge that this is, I don't know if
pretty
things
special.
Get better. Like, this is so good. This is before kids, of course. And then the other one was from the team point of view. We went there in 2004. We ended up winning the test series as a team. We executed. We had some plans as a bowling group. Yep. We changed. We flipped it on its head from what we had been doing and having so much success about, but flipped it to adapt and adjust to the conditions over there and to their players as well. So we ended up winning the series over there, which was an absolute highlight. But at the end of the day, the best memories, necessarily, I'm hopeless at stats and remembering the games of who scored what and what they, what happened. I remember the dressing rooms. I remember those moments, off the field, the celebrations, what we're talking about, but that sort of feeling part, that's what I love most.
Awesome. Team dynamics. How would you describe the culture, spirit and camaraderie on the different teams you played on, for example, Queensland and Australia? Were any unique characters, or did you go through any challenging times?
Yeah. Oh, heaps. I think you played for 20 years and certainly at professional level, and not just for Queensland or Australia. I played 5 years of county cricket. We've got other teams right through. We've played lots of different teams. And one of the things I sort of realised at the end of it all, it makes sense at the end, is what actually exists in your great teams. What exists in these teams, and it makes you realise that, because I played in some pretty ordinary teams as well. And the first thing you notice in those teams, look, I don't want to sound like it's a cliche thing, but is discipline. Because there's rules and there's consequences. Now, not only in a sporting team, but society needs that. Life, family, everything we do. And I think that's where you talk about these consequences. It's almost like the environment, you put the pen up around it, and certainly for generally blokes or young fellas, bang, you play in here, do whatever you like there. Because if you don't put those boundaries in place, it is the foundation of every team, group. You'll find it's the bedrock that you can build everything on top of, is the way I like to talk about it. The next thing I always talk about is respect. You have to respect, obviously, yourself in your preparation, but your teammates, history in the game, respect the opposition as well. It's one of those things, I think, that in the best teams I played with, that, in that order, and then what happens, you find there's this communication in your best teams, because you have this communication and connection with people in the team that you can be frank and honest and no one's offended. We're all helping each other and you're going in one direction. And what I like to think all that builds is this belief. And the term I use is belief. Yeah. Magnus, because the best teams I was in had this thing called belief. Now, you can't see it. It's kind of herbal because you can't touch it, but it exists in the best teams. Because when you look around at the dressing room, and it doesn't matter what situation of the game, but when you look at someone and we can win this because I back you and you and you and everyone else around us, there's nothing. For those people fortunate enough to be in sport, or it might be any environment, where you're in this, it's not an arrogance, but there's a confidence in whatever we got here because we can do it. We'll find a way. That's what exists in those teams. And the one thing I love adding to all that is that, it's not easy to create that. And I think for leaders or coaches or, people, it's about putting the environment, creating that environment. That's what existed. But the interesting thing about that is that at the end of the day, you might not win the game, but you know what? You'll never lose.
What about the best captain that you played under?
I really liked Steve Waugh. He was great. And for me, he was really good. And the reason being that when you're in the team, he really backed you. You felt backed. I think that's the other side of it too. Like, he really backed you, and and I'm going the high profile here. He was excellent, and and shared those experiences, like in India and all that along the way. And look, Stuart Law for Queensland through our sort of heyday early on with Queensland, true, set us up as well and led. And when you've got an Alan Border coming back in, which is a pretty handy resource at first slip, you've got an Ian Healy as well. You've got all these other resources around you, and I think that's what the best leaders do. They understand. Maybe they're not the ideal, not the perfect, but they understand the strength of the team and the resources and people around them, and surround themselves with those elements.
Yeah. And it comes back into what you're saying before with the belief. So it's not only believing in yourself, but then knowing that you've got the captain believing in you, which I think that just helps boost your confidence and improve the certainty.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, and for every player, it doesn't matter, if it's, kids on the weekend, you just want to feel like you not so much belong. Well, you kind of do. You want to sort of belong to the team. And in cricket, you get 5 wickets, and then you feel, tick, we're in. 100 runs, tick. But there's so many other parts of being involved in that team, and at the end of the day, it's the performance on the field is so important, but I think off the field is a massive part as well.
Definitely. So injuries we touched on before, they're a part of any athlete's journey, and you've had your struggles both with, I think, mainly back and groin strain. Is there anything in particular that you did that helped you bounce back both mentally and physically?
I think as an athlete, the most impatient patient that exists, because you just get me back on. And quite often being impatient, you come back too quick. And so trusting the medical advice to take time and a bit more longer than you think and all those type of things, that's the hardest part. I'll give an example is that I had a shoulder reconstruction in year 2000, bringing in the new millennium. I had a bit of a sore shoulder, came back from New Zealand with the Australian team. I could still bowl and throw and all that, but it was really achy. But starting in the gym again for pre-season, it just wasn't quite right. I thought, I'll just go and check out with the doctor and have a look. We had a scan. Came back, they said, a bit of a problem here. It looks like you've got an 80% tear of your rotator cuff. This is my right arm, bowling arm.
So just to stop you there, was that from bowling or was that from carrying the Australian team, do you think, sore shoulder?
Possibly. But I think that's where, it was one of those ones where I said, okay, well, what's the process? We said, we don't know. No one's ever come back from a torn rotator cuff. So you're 28 years old and you've just been handed that card. And it's like, right, well, I'm not ready to finish just yet. We'll see what we do. So went in, had the operation, turned out it wasn't. It was more the labrum, and they had to restitch that bang. And so I would have done in the rehab from that, at just conservative numbers here, 1 million of the rubber bands sort of,
yes.
Like the exercise where you're doing all the strengthening thing, dropping your shoulder back and down, and just that whole thing to stabilise the whole shoulder.
Yep.
At least that. And then I even started playing in that next season, and I could bowl, but I couldn't throw at that stage. I even taught myself to throw left arm as well, playing for University of Queensland. That was at the start of the year. That's like September, October. I actually got picked to go to India with the Australian cricket team after Christmas. And I went, I remember going down to Bellreeve Oval just after Christmas down at Hobart. Now it's a bowler's graveyard, this place. It's so flat. And it's one place in my whole career early on, I'd never got really wickets, too many there, and just batsmen. I think Jimmy Maher even, who played batsman for Queensland, batted 6. He reckons his first 4 years of going to Bellreeve, he didn't even get a bat because you never lost any wickets. It was just a road, as we call it. Anyway, I ended up coming in and bowling fast, getting 5 wickets and really doing it, but also throwing. I had this almost like a retread on this shoulder, and this thing was unreal. And I got picked to go to India again in 2001 with the Australian side, and there was one of the 13 times I got picked, but then I also got dropped after it. But just as another example, I guess, of, you're getting dealt these cards. And I think one of the things you learnt, and I certainly do, and I love sharing this with people, you got to own your journey. You own your journey, and not everyone gets the same opportunities. But you have to do the best, play the best hand with the cards you've got.
Yeah, you get dealt.
You dealt. And, at the end of the day, find a way to keep being getting selectors looking at you and picking you and actually interested in getting you back in the team.
Awesome philosophy. Now, let's touch on transitioning from player to businessman, and what were some of the challenges that you faced after your cricketing career finished?
Well, I immediately sort of towards the end of my cricket, I was always looking at I thought, I could possibly study, I need to do something outside, because the standard question you get is, are you Coach Kasper, are you coaching or commentating? And I love using the word perception and talking about the concept of perception. And one of the big lessons I learnt in the game that no one sat me down and told me about when I started. But when you understand around, sports people and politicians for that matter are the two people in society that understand how perception works better than anyone. The reason being is that everyone's got an opinion about us based on which team we play for. We love you or hate you. Maroon, I love you. Blue, I hate you. And that's where we sort of understand how that works. So I was trying to incorporate that into life after. So rather than coaching or commentating, I thought, well, I'm going to do something no other Australian cricketer's ever done. And that was an MBA, Master of Business. I did that at the University of Queensland, so it was a proper one. And never mind playing cricket in India in 40-degree heat. I reckon that MBA was one of the toughest things I've ever done too.
Now, you're also the first ever fast bowler to get onto the board of Cricket Australia. How was your time on the board, and do you recall any significant achievements?
Yeah, I spent 8.5 years being on the board of Cricket Australia. Now, my journey there was maybe it's a bit like everything else I do. It's non-conventional in that normally in the old days, you would join the board, you'd start your journey. I'll make this a short version because Carl Rackerman says a 30-minute version of this. You'd be a committeeman at your local cricket association. Then after 10 or so, 15 years, then you get onto the board of Cricket Australia, Queensland Cricket. And then after another 20, 30 years, if you're there long enough and doing a good job, then you go onto the board. It'd be a nomination from Queensland Cricket onto the board of Cricket Australia. That's generally the pathway. For me, I was president of the Players Association, the Australian Cricketers Association, and Queensland Cricket asked me, because they changed their constitution, because they could get someone else from outside their board to be on the board of Cricket Australia. So there was 14 members on the board of Cricket Australia, 3 from New South Wales, South Australia and Victoria. Western Australia, Queensland had 2, Tassie 1. What that meant was that they were all from the boards of the state associations. Queensland changed constitution and wanted me to go onto the board. My response to Jim Holding, who was the chairman of Queensland Cricket at the time, I said, so mate, you were asking me to go on the board of Cricket Australia, essentially to vote myself off, because there's a corporate governance review on right now that's surely going to recommend a smaller, skill-based but independent board. He said, yep. I said, I'd love to jump on the grenade. Let's do it. So I did. I actually went on the board. We successfully did that change. I stayed for that next 3 year period. Then I obviously was doing a pretty good job. Then I stayed for another 3 section and then sort of nearly did the full term. But the one thing I reckon I could do, unlike any of the other board members, or the thing I provided was I could see every decision that Cricket Australia made through the lens of every stakeholder. So as a former player, as administrator of the Australian Cricket Association, so the militant union, I spent 6 months as the interim CEO of Queensland Cricket, so the state association I could see it. Then as a volunteer from the media side of things, so I've done a bit of that along the way. And even a volunteer, I've seen how all decisions affect all groups of Australian cricket. So I saw my role on there was to represent every single person, from parents to kids to whatever. It's because I've sort of been through those, I've lived in those shoes.
Let's shift. I know you're very passionate about mental health. Can you share your involvement with IF Men and what's planned for 2024?
Yeah, a good mate of mine I've come across, Clint Hoffman his name is. Interesting. He's from Darwin originally. He was like a managing partner of one of the partners of EY up there and doing a lot of work in that sort of space, but he stepped away from it. He actually had been seeing a psychologist and just sort of helping, just getting some resources to help him with life and what he's doing and how it's working out and all that. Anyway, one day, he's a good mate of his, Twinkles, came to him and said, what do you talk about with your psychologist? And he said, oh, look, I don't, we just talk about bits and pieces and all that. Anyway, Twinkles went away, family, a couple of kids, all that stuff. What I understand is that a month or so later, Twinkles killed himself. And that really hit Clint because he just thought, what could I have done, as we all do, as everyone who's been touched by it or unfortunately been involved in that sort of similar circumstances. And what Clint did was that I think the poem If by Rudyard Kipling was, Twinkles loved it, I think, and Clint knew it and all that. So he just thought, what I'm going to do is that poem with its 12 life lessons in there, put it onto an app, if you like, give as a resource, get his psychologist, his guys, care, like the guy helping out to explain these things, but just so it's accessible, as a resource. What he also did, he's got a company that does a couple of other cool learning platform things, and one of the things they do is through animated. So he animated the If poem, and he got Jack Thompson to narrate it. Now Jack Thompson's got one of the the smoothest voice in Australia, but Jack's got involved, and the connection there is really and so solid. So what we did, Clint told me, this is what I'm doing, and I thought I'll come along. And there was a lunch. The first year we had 50 people come to the Gabba, whereby we had 50 seats. We went the cheap seats of the Gabba, and I was just formally off the board of Cricket Australia. Otherwise, it would have been corporate box. Anyway, we were out there, but we were sitting out the outer, but there was 50 of us who all had a pink and blue If baggy cap on. We also had a shirt that's sort of, and banging shorts and the rest of it. But we were a team. We were a bunch of guys, all that, just sitting around having a good time and sharing this experience, watching, I think it was the Ashes. And then I took everyone around to see the Alan Borders statue that was just being put up. And anyway, we just knocked around. It was a great experience. The next year we had 150 turn up to it. And one of the things that I spoke with Clint about, I said, you know what we'd love to do? Personally, I'd love to do the pink test for the McGrath Foundation in Sydney. That started with one day. Day 3 was the pink day. Everyone comes in pink. So I was looking at that thinking, why don't we, and I'm trying to find a way, and I've spoken to a couple of different groups. There's It's a Bloke Thing, which is a men's prostate charity, kind of based out of Toowoomba. So they're really keen. There's lots of other groups that are doing some awesome work, right? What I'm really keen to do is turn, if you like, the Gabba blue. Let's be blue for one day for blokes. And it's sort of a light blue. It's not dark blue, so it's not New South Wales, Queensland. But it's a light blue, meaning signifying it's for blokes. So we're going to sort of try and make it about men's wellness, and just make people not so much going around with a tin and raise money for everyone. It's not about that. It's raising awareness. And all the different groups that can actually be there. So have a real theme, because I know all the commentators, they're all mates, different media outlets. We can have got that and opportunity just to spread the word as a tool. So this year we're going along. Have you heard about the Gabba Troopers?
I have. So
the Gabba Troopers all turn up in these stormtrooper looking uniforms, and they get a couple of hundred normally, 400 people sitting together as a group. You can't miss them. Well, it's even better this year because there's going to be 100 pink stormtroopers representing the If project. So it's going to be good fun.
It's a great cause. I was there earlier this year in the crowd there and met your good self. And then, looking forward to doing it again next year in the pink stormtrooper outfit. So personal fitness and lifestyle beyond cricket. What keeps you active and mentally strong? Yeah,
I was actually tried running regularly. And I wasn't a massive runner back in the day. I'm 100 and a few kilos these days. But my playing weight was sort of 97, so I haven't sort of gone too far from where I was. I used to love running. And I say used to because what I'd do is stick headphones on, listen to music, my music, and disappear, just sort of think about whatever it was. Or then it turned into sort of running and walking. But then I end up doing a bit of an MCL on my right knee, and having no knee injuries my entire career. I actually did my knee, stepping on my wife's dress, walking down a set of stairs, and twisted my knee that way, which was a shame. But at the same time, I had a little bit of a clean up in there, and it hasn't quite been the same, so I haven't been able to run as much. So I've tried a few different things. I even tried U-Box, which formerly known as 12 round, Danny Green concept. Going and doing that sort of circuit training with a couple of bags and other bits and pieces. I've tried a few other bits, from a CrossFit to F45. I've tried different things over the years, but it's one of those things, I guess, as a former athlete too, that you want to, you sort of kind of know what you need. You don't push yourself as hard, and I love to do it and train with a bunch of guys, with a bunch of blokes. In fact, Friday mornings, there's a bunch of guys I currently walk and some run with. We stop and have a coffee, but we call ourselves the Breakfast Creek Athletic Club. We meet here in Brisbane at the Mercedes, which is opposite the Breakfast Creek Hotel down at Newstead. We meet there. We've got 18 members of this team. There's quite a different group of guys, but it's invite only. It's very tough to make this one. Anyway, we've been doing this for a couple of years, and what I actually, well, put it this way, they've given me the title of I'm the Chief Technology Officer.
What's that entail?
Well, I introduced the concept of WhatsApp because everyone would email each other and reply all, and it was just a pain in the ass trying to get to the bottom of what's going on here. So it was quite funny when you're talking about partners in legal firms to accounting firms to all these, these guys amongst doing incredible jobs. They never heard of instant messaging. What's that mean? So I introduced WhatsApp in our group, and it's taken off. They've gone nuts with it, but it's great because our theme, I also designed the logo for our shirt, Breakfast Creek Athletic Club, and maybe some irony in that, but it's high performance wellness since 2020.
I love it.
And I think that's the key. I think as much as we talk about men's mental health or men's, the health and all that, I don't like the term health. And certainly with mental health, when we talk about the mental health side of it, because when you talk about health, there's a good day and a bad day. And it's kind of this range. We all live this range of days. There's good and bad. There's, it shouldn't be none or a gutful. And I think that's why taking out the word health, replacing it with wellness, makes it a lot more palatable for people because, there's good days and there's some not so good days, but, we'll find a way to sort of, and the right way and the tools and resources to get it back.
I agree completely, and I've had exactly one of those up and down weeks, and hopefully you won't get too many invaders turning up there at the Brecky Creek, outside the Brecky Creek on a Friday morning for you. But what advice would you give to young and aspiring cricketers who are dreaming of representing Australia?
One of the things I always say at every junior tournament or anything like that is just, if you love this game, if you love it, you keep playing and just keep enjoying it. Because you don't know where it'll take you. Because quite often these days, everyone's quick to select peak players, put them in this pathway system, and identify them now and think that we're going to create a test cricketer out of them then. There are so many examples of the best players that played cricket for Australia that weren't part of pathways, that at the age miraculously of 22, 3, whatever, all of a sudden things clicked or the opportunity came. And the fact of the matter, if you keep trusting yourself and you love it, it's an undying love of just, you don't know where it can take you. And a good example of that is Glenn McGrath. He grew up in Narromine, which I think it's on the way to Burke or at the back of Burke or somewhere out that way in northern New South Wales, northwestern New South Wales. And he was nowhere in any pathways, not ever identified, and you would be out there. But someone spotted him at a New South Wales, Tui's Cup match or something. The boys were out there and they saw this young guy and said, look, come on down to Sydney next year. I think he was like 19. Come on to Sydney. We'll give you a job. We'll give you a house. Come and play for the Southern Shire cricket team. Away you go. Well, even then, he moved down. He got I'm not sure about a car, maybe a bike. They put him in the Millard caravan. So that was his house. But he played cricket. And then all of a sudden it came again. Then he got picked in the New South Wales team. He did well, and then all of a sudden got picked in the Australian cricket team. And then his whole life journey, he's ended up with the most wickets of any Australian fast bowler of all time, and clearly the best. And even I'm saying that even with Dennis Lillee is my absolute icon. Yeah. And the best part about that, Magnus, is the fact that I can call him a mate.
What a great story and some great advice. What about the toughest lesson that you've learned in business?
Not that I expected, or not that I even thought this, not that I expected everyone to be highly motivated, like you find in a sporting team, whereby you have, obviously there's a World Cup or an Ashes series or a Sheffield Shield, a whole season that as a team we're building to that point. And not that I expected everyone to be, motivated, bang, to actually get to that point. But one of the things I've learnt, and maybe I'm talking 10 years, I think, since 96, so there you go, 8 years since I retired, was the fact that business is actually, it comes across like an individual sport. And I'm not saying that everyone's out there just playing for themselves, but it's felt like there was a lot more. I came across a lot more of individual sports people, certainly than the team.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that that's wrong or anything, because I think when you look at the most successful people out there, and obviously there's probably a correlation, of them being the most resourced as well, to be that way. But I just, that to me was the most surprising thing, that when you sort of thought you got some good people around, and maybe it comes back to trust. And maybe that's where in a sporting team like that, you trust everyone, and to the point where you'll trust people to the point where it's up to them to break it, that trust. Maybe in business, and maybe that's the lesson I've learned, is that it's the other way around, is that you've got to earn your trust first. Earn my trust first, and then we're right.
Who were your cricketing idols growing up, and have you had a chance to meet or play alongside any of them?
Well, Dennis Lillee was, for me, he was just, like living, he was like the guy. He was, so cool at what he did. He bowled fast. He, and he had his setbacks as well, but he found a way. And even his book, The Art of Fast Bowling, I was given that when I must have been like 12 years old. And that was my Bible. This book, the cover hasn't quite fallen off but it's just, this was the absolute go-to everything, knew every word, everything about him. Loved it. So, and I got to meet Dennis in my first years. I'm 17 years old. Queensland, we're going over to Perth. We're playing over there. We had a couple of days in between. I think we played in Adelaide, then we're going to Perth. A couple of days, and Jeff Thompson called up. He wasn't the coach at the time, but he organised with Dennis we went out on a boat out to Rottnest, and all of a sudden I'm on this boat with Dennis Lillee, all of a sudden, just he's there, we're having a beer, having a chat. It was unreal. It was
surreal.
So surreal.
Yeah.
And I think that's it, that you're sort of in that environment, and over the years, I've met everyone, as far as the cricket point of view is concerned along the way. From it's quite funny. My son, who plays cricket, he'll say, "Dad, do you know this person? Or have you met them?" And every time it's like, "Yeah, I do." And he just sits there and always goes, "Oh, that sounds awesome."
Lastly, what are your thoughts on the current Australian cricket team?
Oh, I love it. I love the way that the success they've had.
Yeah.
The last 12 months has been amazing. Obviously, the World Cup, they won the Ashes, and they won the Test Championship as well.
They're going all right.
Yeah, they are. But under the surface, you've got all this other stuff seems to go on, doesn't it? Like there's there's been, from Justin Langer as coach and as a mate, he's fantastic, punchy little batsman. But what he did for Western Australia, what he did for the Australian team, but there's some lessons in all that, I reckon, too. And even my time, from a John Buchanan, when he was the best coach also at the time for me. And I think it's a timing thing for the players, not so much the level, but I guess where they are in their career. And I think that's maybe, and what they actually do and what they provide or what they can do. Because I think John Buchanan knew he was the imperfect coach. But what he did was keep challenging the overachievers in that side. So all of a sudden, why can't you win? Why can't you score 400 or 50 overs? Oh, you can't do that. No one can do that. Bang. Well, why not? Because there's 50 dot balls you're leaving on the table there. Oh, okay. Guess what's happening these days? Why can't you win Test Series 5-0? Oh, because you can't. You know, we won 16 straight. So he had this knack of challenging the overachievers.
Of belief again.
Creating that immediately. Yeah. But what he probably didn't do was when you had a new wave of new players coming in, and certainly Shane Warne didn't want to be challenged because he did what he did. And I think that's where you watch even football codes. Certain coaches in their environments at different stages really gel, really connect with players, but then all of a sudden when the players maybe become a bit more senior, they don't need to be doing as many hill sprints now because we understand we don't need to. And so it's maybe that's why coaches sort of have to change individually, but also that's why new, fresh ideas also help along the way.
Yeah, so
which is why Wayne Bennett's so extraordinary, the way that he's gone so long in what he's done, and maybe as his formula has obviously worked the best.
Yeah, no, incredible. So quick fire question time. You ready?
Okay. Yep.
Favourite cricket ground to play on?
Gabba.
Hardest batsman to dismiss?
Sachin Tendulkar in India.
Most memorable match you played in?
Oh, I mentioned that earlier. Nagpur, 4th Test, Australia versus India. We won the series, first time in 50 years.
What's your preferred cricket format?
Test cricket, because the best test of skill. But as I got older, and certainly now at 51-year-old, nearly 52, definitely 2020. The reason being, 24 balls maximum is all you have to bowl.
Greatest cricketing advice you've ever received?
There's been so much, and there's still all that 19 years into one. But I think the one that I give out as much is just keep loving it. Keep loving it, believing in it. You don't know where it's going to take you.
Cricketing memory off the field that you'll never forget?
Well, it's the celebrations in dressing rooms. I guess I remember being in Lords, winning a test match in Lords, and this the history of the Lords ground and all that, and you're sitting in this dressing room looking around, and the moment is going, just acknowledging all that. And I think every winning dressing room is the best memories that and for me that I remember.
Toughest bowling spell you've ever bowled?
Oh, definitely India, like most challenging, 45 degrees plus, so humid, so exhausting and challenging. But at the end of the day, I actually managed to flip that and find a way, adapt and adjust my skills to suit the conditions. And we end up getting 5 wickets, man of the match, and a massive trophy that I don't know how I did, but I managed to get it home back from India.
What was your favourite cricketing shot as a batsman?
I loved my squared drive over backward point.
Best cricketing atmosphere you've experienced?
Oh, India's it's like MCG. I played there, full crowd. It's all great. It's like a sort of a hum, really. It's sort of like this noise, and it's peripheral. But in India, when you're standing on the fence and the noise, the heat, all that sort of stuff, it can get on top of you. But at the same time, that's why you have to enjoy it. Simple smile, and it's amazing how you can actually get the crowd back on.
Favourite ball that you like to bowl?
Well, pretty much anything that hits the stumps or hits the batsman in the head.
Cricketing skill you wish you had better mastered?
I would have loved to have been recognised as an all-rounder. I think you would have loved more time, in the middle. And back yourself, obviously, had potential, but I think just you would have loved to have sort of maybe just done a bit more there.
Standout teammate from your playing days?
Oh, it's a long, long list. I'm going to go with Queensland to start with. Certainly Andy Bickle, good mate of mine, and Wade Seckham as well, two of my best buddies. But blokes like Jimmy Marr, Stuart Law, but Andrew Simons, rest in peace, unfortunately, for his passing last year. But he was one of the most amazing people in the team, funniest guys to have around, but also too just just one of those almost. He had this ability of just drawing everyone into the group and connecting people in such a way. He did that obviously in the cricket field. And I know, I said this to his mother at his funeral, like listening and watching all the different groups he was involved with, from his fishing groups, from different mobs he was involved with. But he had this ability of connecting people.
Yeah, he's a legend. What was your best ever bowling figures?
7 for 36 with the Australian cricket team was at the Oval in the 1997 Ashes. However, my best ever figures, I think I got a 9 for twice. I got 9 fors in playing for Glamorgan against Durham in the 1 year. Martin Love was actually I got 9 wickets in the innings at Cardiff, Sophia Gardens, and then we played them again up at Riverside, which was their home ground. I got 9 wickets in the innings up there as well. Martin Love, I played for the University of Queensland and for Queensland my whole career. So it's kind of sweet that someone I know actually was there to see it.
Epic. Last question. Finish this sentence. I believe.
Only because it's last songitis, okay? Eddie Vedder. I think it was a Neil Young song, I Believe in Miracles. I believe in miracles. So I think I'd like to think that karma, perhaps, maybe it's on the spot. I'm thinking maybe that's the way. If you live a good life, this one, good things will come your way.
Well said. Thank you so much, Michael, for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you at the Gabba test next year.
Love it. Thanks so much, Magnus. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you for tuning in today's conversation. We hope you all found this episode as inspiring and informative as we did. You can check out more about today's guest by heading to the link in the show notes. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, we have a small favour to ask. Please take a moment to subscribe, review, and share this podcast with someone you think would appreciate it. Your support helps us reach more listeners, and we can continue delivering content that educates, inspires, and empowers. Don't forget to follow us on social media to stay in the loop with all the latest news. 2024 is shaping up to be a huge year. We'll continue running our weekly Friday morning kayaking sessions on the beautiful Brisbane River, along with plenty more thrilling adventures, exciting activities and challenges in store. We'd love for you to join us and be part of our growing community. Remember, it's all about consistency, and by investing 26 minutes exercising both your mind and your body every day, you too can become the strongest, fittest and healthiest version of you. So stay tuned and stay active.